Pakistan just delivered what many are calling the most shocking performance against South Africa in recent history. And the implications for Africa standing on the global stage. Massive. This isn't just about cricket scores or political posturing. This is about how Africa positions itself against rising Asian powers, and what South Africa's response tells us about the continent's future strategy. Today, we're breaking down the Pakistan versus South Africa dynamics that everyone's talking about, but nobody's analyzing from an African perspective. We'll cover the historical context that shaped this rivalry, the current situation that has everyone's attention, the key players driving these developments, and most importantly, what this means for Africa's rise on the global stage. Let's start with the foundation. Pakistan and South Africa's relationship runs deeper than most people realize. Since 1994, when South Africa emerged from apartheid, these two nations have been dancing a complex diplomatic and economic tango. Pakistan was one of the first countries to support the anti-apartheid movement, despite pressure from Western allies. This created a bond that transcended typical diplomatic relations. In the economic sphere, trade between Pakistan and South Africa has grown from $200 million in 1995 to over $1.2 billion today. But here's what the mainstream media won't tell you: this relationship represents something much bigger. It's Africa learning to build partnerships beyond the traditional Western powers that have dominated the continent for centuries. Pakistan brings expertise in textiles, agriculture technology, and defense equipment. South Africa offers mining technology, financial services, and serves as a gateway to the entire African continent. This isn't just bilateral trade, it's strategic positioning. Like this video if you want to help more Africans see this story that the international media is overlooking. Now, let's examine what's happening right now that has everyone talking. The recent developments between Pakistan and South Africa span multiple fronts: diplomatic, economic, and yes, even sporting. In the diplomatic arena, South Africa has been walking a tightrope. While maintaining its non-aligned movement principles, the country has been increasingly vocal about supporting Pakistan's position on Kashmir, a stance that has raised eyebrows in New Delhi and Washington. This is where it gets interesting for Africa. South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa recently stated that South-South cooperation must replace the old colonial patterns of dependence. That's code for Africa is choosing its own partners. Economically, the Pakistan-South Africa Business Council announced a $500 million investment package last month. Pakistani companies are investing in South African mining operations, while South African firms are expanding into Pakistan's growing consumer market of 230 million people. But here's the real story: China is watching this partnership very closely. Beijing sees the Pakistan-South Africa axis as crucial to its Belt and Road Initiative in Africa. Pakistan serves as China's gateway to the Middle East and Central Asia, while South Africa is China's key entry point into sub-Saharan Africa. The numbers are staggering. Chinese investment in Pakistan exceeded $27 billion through the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. Chinese investment in South Africa reached $25 billion in 2023. When you connect these dots, you're looking at a strategic triangle that could reshape global trade routes. And the West? They're not happy about it. Subscribe for honest, Pan-African analysis you won't find on CNN or BBC. Let's talk about the key players shaping this relationship. On the Pakistani side, Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif has made Africa a priority in Pakistan's foreign policy reset. His government established the Pakistan-Africa Trade Development Conference specifically to deepen ties with African nations. Shehbaz Sharif understands something crucial: Pakistan needs to diversify beyond China and the Middle East. Africa, with its 1.4 billion people and fastest-growing economies, represents the future. His recent statement that Pakistan's prosperity is linked to Africa's rise wasn't just diplomatic flattery, it was strategic recognition. On the South African side, Minister of International Relations Naledi Pandor has been the architect of this deepening partnership. Pandor, one of Africa's most respected diplomats, sees Pakistan as a model for how developing nations can achieve technological advancement while maintaining sovereignty. But here's the power player nobody talks about: Naspers, the South African media and internet giant. Through its investments in Pakistani e-commerce and fintech companies, Naspers has become a bridge between South African capital and Pakistani innovation. They've invested over $300 million in Pakistani startups since 2020. The business community is driving this relationship as much as the politicians. Companies like Bidvest, MTN, and Standard Bank from South Africa are seeing Pakistan as their gateway to Central and South Asia markets. From Pakistan's side, companies like Lucky Cement and Engro Corporation are viewing South Africa as their African headquarters. These aren't small investments. Lucky Cement alone committed $200 million to expand operations across Southern Africa. This is Africa learning to be a player, not just a playing field. Now, let's examine what this means for Africa's continental strategy and the broader Pan-African vision. The Pakistan-South Africa partnership represents something revolutionary, Africa choosing strategic partners based on mutual benefit rather than historical obligation. Think about it. For decades, Africa's international partnerships were determined by colonial history, World Bank conditions, or great power competition. The Pakistan-South Africa axis breaks that pattern. It's based on complementary strengths, shared development goals, and mutual respect for sovereignty. This is the Africa Rising narrative in action, not just rhetoric. Pakistan brings proven expertise in several areas where Africa needs to advance rapidly. Agricultural technology, Pakistan transformed itself from food importer to food exporter. Defense manufacturing, Pakistani defense exports exceeded $1 billion last year. Information technology, Pakistan's IT exports grew 400% in the last decade. South Africa brings what Pakistan needs: advanced mining technology, sophisticated financial services, and most importantly, established trade relationships across the African continent. But here's the bigger picture. This partnership is creating a template for Africa's engagement with Asian powers that bypass traditional Western intermediaries. Nigeria is watching closely and already exploring similar arrangements with Bangladesh and Indonesia. Kenya is building stronger ties with Malaysia and Thailand. Ghana is deepening relationships with Vietnam and South Korea. This isn't random, it's strategic. African nations are learning that they can build direct relationships with Asian economies that offer technology transfer, investment, and market access without the traditional conditions imposed by Western partners. This is how continents rise. Not through dependence, but through strategic interdependence. The Pakistan-South Africa partnership is also strengthening Africa's position in multilateral forums. Both countries coordinate positions in the United Nations, the Non-Aligned Movement, and various South-South cooperation platforms. So what does this mean for Africa's future? The Pakistan-South Africa partnership represents a new model for how African nations can engage with the world, as equals, not supplicants. First, it demonstrates that Africa can build strategic partnerships that serve African interests. The traditional model where African countries had to choose between Western or Eastern camps is becoming obsolete. Africa is building its own network of partnerships based on mutual benefit. Second, it shows how African countries can leverage their unique strengths. South Africa's advanced financial sector, sophisticated infrastructure, and established trade networks make it an ideal partner for countries seeking African market access. Pakistan gets a gateway to 54 African markets. Africa gets access to Asian technology and markets. That's win-win, not exploitation. Third, this partnership is creating new models for technology transfer. Pakistani companies aren't just investing money in Africa, they are transferring knowledge, training local workers, and building local capacity. This is sustainable development, not resource extraction. The numbers support this optimism. Trade between Pakistan and African countries has grown 300% since 2015. More importantly, 60% of this trade now consists of manufactured goods and services, not just raw materials. But here's what excites me most about this development: it's inspiring other African countries to think bigger. Nigeria is already exploring how to replicate this model with Indonesia and Malaysia. Egypt is building similar partnerships with Turkey and Iran. Kenya is developing strategic relationships with South Korea and Vietnam. This is Africa learning to be a continent of strategic partnerships rather than aid recipients. It's Africa understanding that the future belongs to those who build bridges, not walls. Subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss our analysis of how Africa is reshaping global power dynamics. Looking ahead, This Pakistan-South Africa partnership is likely to deepen significantly over the next decade. Both countries have young, growing populations. Both are investing heavily in technology and innovation. Both understand that their futures are linked to successful South-South cooperation. Watch for major announcements in the coming months around joint ventures in renewable energy, information technology, and pharmaceutical manufacturing. These aren't just business deals, they are building blocks of a new global order where Africa plays by its own rules. This is how Africa rises. Not by waiting for permission, but by building partnerships that serve African interests. Check out this next video where we explore how Nigeria is building similar strategic partnerships across Asia, and what this means for West Africa's economic transformation. And comment below, what other partnerships would you like to see Africa building? The conversation continues in the comments. Your insights help shape how we understand Africa's rising role in global affairs.